Welcome. We're doing a deep dive today into, well, an extraordinary claim.
Yeah.
It really connects secret government tech, major historical events, and some genuinely mind-bending ideas.
It really does.
Our plan is to unpack the details from the material we have. There's an audio clip and an article from executiveproducer.posterous.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about a whistleblower claiming involvement in a secret time travel program, knowing about 9/11 decades early, and even visiting the Gettysburg Address.
Yeah, this is definitely an exploration into a narrative that's, well, fascinating and provocative, to say the least.
Yeah.
It really pushes against how we normally think about history and tech.
Definitely.
So we really encourage you, the listener, to just, take in the information without jumping to conclusions right away.
Okay, so let's start with Project Pegasus. This is where we first encounter Andrew Basiago.
Right.
The source material describes him as an attorney from Washington State, calling him articulate, cogent, and credible, which is quite a statement given the nature of his claims.
It is, especially when you consider the skepticism that usually greets this kind of testimony.
Exactly. And his core claim revolves around being part of a secret DARPA time travel program as a kid. He called it Project Pegasus.
And probably his most, let's say, startling claim is that back in 1971, he saw moving images of the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers.
Decades before it happened.
3 decades before. And the idea is these images were somehow pulled from the future, brought back to the early 70s.
Wow.
Now, DARPA, we know they have a public track record, right? ARPANET, which became the Internet, other advanced projects.
Sure, they're known for cutting-edge stuff.
But Basiago's saying their secret work went way beyond that. He claims that by 1970, they'd achieved a teleportation-based time travel and also ways to see past and future events using something he calls quantum access.
Quantum access. What does that actually entail, according to him?
Well, he doesn't break down the physics in exhaustive detail, obviously, but
Yeah.
the term itself, in theoretical physics, it hints at using quantum phenomena like entanglement to get information across time. It's highly speculative stuff.
Extremely.
But Basiago asserts DARPA secretly mastered this decades ago.
And he's specific about where he saw these supposed 9/11 images, too.
Yes, he points to the Aerojet Corporation facility, the one that used to be at Bullock Avenue and Leroy Place in Sacramento, New Mexico.
Okay, so a specific place, a specific time.
And then there's the alleged connection to Donald Rumsfeld. This is another major part of the story.
Rumsfeld.
Yes. According to Basiago, Donald Rumsfeld, who, remember, was the Secretary of Defense on 9/11, was actually the defense attaché to Project Pegasus back in the early 70s.
While also working for Nixon.
While also serving as a counselor to President Nixon, exactly.
So the implication there is pretty huge. You have to wonder, what does tying someone like Rumsfeld into this fantastical story add for the listener? What's the effect?
Well, the clear implication of Basiago's testimony is that Rumsfeld, and presumably others, might have known about 9/11 long before it happened, thanks to this quantum access data.
Decades of foreknowledge.
Right. And the source material explicitly frames this. It says this could be the key to society's unraveling of the ultimate accountability for the false flag operation that took place on September 11th, 2001.
Okay, so we need to be clear. That's the perspective presented in the source material. It connects the time travel claim directly to a very serious political accusation about 9/11.
Precisely. It shifts it from just, a weird sci-fi story to something with potentially massive real-world political implications. We're just reporting what the source claims here.
Got it. Okay, so if seeing the future wasn't enough, Basiago also claims he actually went to the past, specifically to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address.
Yeah, and he offers what he calls corroborative documentary evidence for this trip. A photograph and an audio recording, apparently.
Let's talk about the tech he says they used for that.
Yeah.
It's different, right?
A bit. He calls it plasma confinement. Describes it as a wormholing method developed by a Dr. Sterling Colgate.
Plasma confinement. Sounds familiar, but maybe not for time travel.
Right. Normally in physics, that term refers to using magnetic fields to contain superheated plasma, usually for, fusion energy research. Basiago is using the term very differently for this wormhole travel idea.
So how did it supposedly work?
He said the traveler stands in a clear lucite chamber, walks into a cloud of plasma, and is then essentially wormholed to the past location. And this specific trip, he says, happened in the spring of '72 from a lab in East Hanover, New Jersey.
And there's a personal angle to this one too, right? He said it was a reward.
Yes, a reward for his performance in Project Pegasus.
But he wasn't keen initially. There's that odd detail about Lincoln.
Right. It adds this very human, almost relatable element. He said he was initially reluctant, even scared to see Lincoln.
Why?
Because he'd seen that famous 1863 portrait by Alexander Gardner, and he thought Lincoln looked like a chimpanzee in a black suit. That's what he claims. He called it a Boo Radley moment from his childhood reading. Said he begged off at first and only went to please his father.
It's almost funny being more scared of Lincoln's appearance than, traveling through time.
It is a strange detail. So before he went, his father apparently showed him an old map of Gettysburg mimeographed from 1863,
Okay.
pointed out a specific north-south road where he'd arrive, and told him to ask for directions into town from there. Then a woman named Valerie dressed him up as a Union Bugle Boy.
Dressed him up. Like in period costume.
Seems so, as a Union Bugle Boy.
Okay. And then the journey itself. He described that too.
He called it a hellacious journey. Said he went through the quantum plenum, whatever that might be, maybe some kind of underlying reality fabric.
Sounds intense.
He described moving through arching tunnels, kind of chaotic. And when he arrived near that road in Gettysburg, he was disoriented, feverish, smelled ozone.
And he lost some clothes.
Yeah. His hat, both shoes, and one sock were apparently ripped off during the transit.
So he's standing there, barefoot on one side.
Right. And he says he made a practical choice. Took off the other sock so he'd be completely barefoot. Figured it looked less weird than one sock on, one sock off.
Makes a strange kind of sense, I suppose. So then what? Barefoot in Gettysburg.
He starts walking into town, shivering because it's cold autumn air. And he quickly runs into a gaunt teenage soldier, a Union soldier. He asks for directions, and the soldier just pointed the way.
Okay, so he gets into town, and then there's this detailed encounter.
Yes, this is where he meets John Lawrence Burns. He describes seeing this elderly man, maybe 70, limping very badly, who comes up onto the wooden sidewalk.
Burns. That name is historically significant for Gettysburg, isn't it?
Very. Burns was a real person, a town cobbler, veteran of the War of 1812, and he actually fought as a civilian volunteer with the Union Army at the Battle of Gettysburg in July 1863, where he was wounded.
And Basiago says this limping man yelled at him.
Yeah, yelled something about Basiago catching a grip, which Basiago figured meant getting sick, like the cold or flu in that era's slang. He later identified this man as Burns from historical photos.
The level of detail here is striking.
It really is. Burns, according to Basiago, then showed him some kindness, took him into his shop, which Basiago remembers as a millinery shop with men's shoes and hats.
Okay.
And Burns gave him shoes, huge ones, size 14 brown street shoes, that he had to stuff with packing paper to make them fit Basiago.
Wow. Size 14.
And also found him a navy blue Union winter parka that apparently fit him perfectly.
And Basiago claims he later verified Burns' appearance, his limp, his job, from history.
Yes, he emphasizes these startling historical correspondences, as he calls them. Things he couldn't have known unless he was there, is the implication.
It's interesting, isn't it? You have these very specific, potentially verifiable historical details about Burns woven into this incredible story of teleportation. How should you, the listener, weigh that?
That's the core challenge, really. It's a technique anchoring the unbelievable claim in lots of granular, factual-sounding historical detail. It makes you question how much is just description versus actual corroboration.
Right.
So after getting Basiago outfitted, Burns apparently said he had to leave because the president was arriving, and he wanted to see him.
Lincoln.
So Burns limps out, and Basiago follows him towards the platform, the dais, where Lincoln was going to speak.
And he describes the platform, too.
Yeah, very specifically. An open wooden area, maybe 15, 20 feet deep, 40 feet wide, decorated with red, white, and blue bunting. But importantly, no canopy, no pillars, just a flat wooden stage.
Okay, almost there. But there's one more twist at the Gettysburg side, isn't there?
There is. A final, really surprising detail. Basiago says while he was there near the dais, he saw his own father.
His father. Also time traveling.
Apparently so. Dressed as a Pennsylvania farmer. Basiago explains his father had also been sent to that exact same day, November 19th, 1863, but had left the lab in East Hanover on a different day than he did.
So not traveling together, but arriving at the same point in time from different starting points.
Exactly. Which suggests, if true, a much more complex, coordinated effort behind Project Pegasus, not just sending one kid back as a reward.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. We've got these incredibly detailed stories, names, places, dates, historical figures, even specific items of clothing. What does this richness of detail suggest about these kinds of claims? What should you take away from this intricate narrative?
Well, what's fascinating, as you said, is the sheer level of detail. Specific names for the tech, like plasma confinement or the chronovisor, which is a term you sometimes hear in sci-fi, for devices that view time.
Right.
All the way to descriptions of the physical sensations, the ozone smell, the disorientation, and these very specific interactions with figures like John Lawrence Burns. And this raises a really important question, I think. How do we critically look at claims like this? Claims that weave together things we know happened, like the Gettysburg Address or 9/11, with these alleged secret programs and technologies that sound like science fiction? The insight, perhaps, is to notice how that weaving happens, using those verifiable facts to maybe lend credibility to the parts that are completely extraordinary and unverified. It's a specific narrative strategy.
So we've really gone down the rabbit hole here. Prophetic visions of 9/11 obtained decades early, a barefoot kid teleporting to the Gettysburg Address. Andrew Basiago's story definitely pushes the boundaries of what seems possible.
It absolutely challenges our perception of reality.
It really does.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. If we connect this to the bigger picture, just consider for a moment the implications if any part of these claims about secret technology were true, even a fraction of it.
What would that mean?
Well, what would it mean for how we understand history, or destiny, or even just the basic fabric of reality if the past, present, and future aren't necessarily laid out in the straight line we usually imagine?